Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Citizen Representatives Podcast. My name is Tyler. I'm here with my friend Adam. It is the 16th of March, 2021. Am I right, Adam?
Sounds right, yeah.
I lose track, mainly because of daylight savings time. Now, this is one of the tyrannies of the government. Of course, let's just get hot and heavy into this. What are your opinions? Is this tyrannical? Do we need to take up arms?
Oh, I mean, I'm open to your argument about being tyrannical. For sure, it's absurdly useless in our day and age. Um, yeah, I'm ready to do away with it.
Yesterday was the first day because yesterday was the first day back for us to have to get up early. It started on, I guess, Sunday evening or Sunday night, Sunday morning. I don't remember. Like I say, I'm losing track. We didn't have
Uh,
to be up that early for church, and the kids had off Monday because of spring break, and so it was Tuesday yesterday that we had to get up, and it didn't work. So one of the things that they took this hour from us. That's an hour that we can never get back, and it's an anachronism that they have this anyway. I mean, the majority of people aren't farming anymore. Am I mistaken?
well, they give you the hour back in the fall, right?
It doesn't. Yeah, but
It doesn't work that way.
it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, no, it's an absurd thing. I mean, I think I give Ben Franklin some credit for coming up with it when he did, as far as, like you mentioned, the farmer thing, but we're done with that. I think we can all just, take our cues from Arizona and do away with this thing.
Of course, Arizona is a border state. I live very close to them, and they never change their time. As far as they don't change to daylight savings time. And Utah, the representatives in Utah have passed a law to basically repeal daylight savings time, but it's with the agreement that or the understanding that other states do it. It's
Oh,
with the
really? Hmm.
prerequisite that other states that there has to be a certain number of states, neighboring states that enact it also, and then we'll go into it. Utah didn't want to forge their own path and join with Arizona. They said, okay, we'll do it as long as everyone else does it. That
Oh,
seems kind of weak leadership to me.
we're kind of milk toast state, I mean,
Pretty milk toast.
Idaho, that they never did a mask mandate, did they? Maybe in some of the cities, but Utah, yeah. Let's do everything the rest of the country does.
I know we must do it that way. In other news, we were talking about my underwear choices, and it was a fascinating argument, or excuse me, conversation. And Adam said we needed to save it. Basically, it came down to he asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said a race car driver. And I said when I was 7 or 8, my mom bought me race car underwear, and the pictures of the race cars were on the back side, but I wanted it on the front side, so I changed it, and um, it was pretty. I don't think that lasted very long.
You had the first mankini.
The first mankini, it was. I kind of kept it to myself, except for now. This was a long-held secret that I had, and
See, I had
it's something.
I knew all the cool guys, and they said boxers. So, as of kindergarten, boxers all the way.
Kindergarten. I see. I had never even heard of them. I don't think until probably high school. I
Yeah,
lived probably in a smaller community than you, so
yeah. Uh, you know, yeah. No, I could say more, but I like freedom. I really dig freedom, and I'm a boxers man. For all the ladies watching out there, because I know we have a ton of you know, fans.
I know we've got so many. So the revelation for me was boxer briefs because no more wedgies. So that's as far as I'm going to go there. So the
That's
humor of
acceptable.
the day, besides that, um, Breitbart is reporting that Meghan Markle. We started the show off last week with some Meghan Markle commentary, and now Meghan Markle is networking with Democrats for a potential bid for the U.S. presidency. And this is one of the funnier things that I've seen lately.
Uh,
She
you
couldn't
you
cut
haven't
it
sent a
as
donation?
a
You haven't sent your
no. I
donation
haven't
yet?
sent a donation. No, um, they apparently did a someone did a GoFundMe to pay off their mortgage. I didn't know they had a mortgage, and it, it failed
Sorry.
spectacularly. So
Uh,
the person who can't handle being in the monarchy, is that what they call it? I'm so behind the times.
yes.
In
Yeah.
England, they can't handle being in the monarchy. She can't handle being a princess or whatever her title is. She can't
Yeah.
handle that, and now she's gonna go for the U.S. presidency. Now, for this is not out of the realm of possibility, just based on some of the people who have gotten into politics lately, thinking that it's a glamorous position. The press would have her back 110%, probably.
Yeah.
And you know, you never know. It's just one of those things. You know,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Didn't that interview kind of bomb, or did it do okay?
I don't know how the ratings were, but I only saw clips and people talking about how disastrously it went. But
Yeah.
when you're in the bubble and your circle is telling you how well it went, then you kind of
Yeah.
get some delusions. And I think that may have been what happened.
Right. And if she, even if people realized, okay, this is really silly, and it's easy once the critics come out and they start criticizing, then, everybody comes to her defense and it suddenly becomes a good interview because people don't like you to criticize.
Well, people were definitely talking about it, and declaring that you're running for the U.S. presidency gets people talking about you again. So perhaps it's just one of those things that, look at me, look at me. Um, I don't know. Maybe we should announce we're running for presidency. Maybe we'll double our viewership.
Uh, I don't know if I have that kind of narcissism in me, but I could probably get there. With a little
um,
encouragement, Tyler, I could get there.
Again, this is Tyler with my friend Adam. We're with Citizen Representatives. Citizen Representatives is a movement that aims to help reduce corruption in the government. We aim to do that by coming together as citizens in districts, congressional districts, and states to come together to elect people with the understanding and the agreement that those people, in return for us electing them and supporting them, they will in turn vote with the majority of the people in the district or state on any particular matter that they're voting on. And this will help to hopefully eliminate a lot of problems or at least reduce them. We can't eliminate all problems. There will always be some issues with this or that, but that's the goal of citizen representatives. Um, Now, I've gone viral with a video. We went from about 8 views to 16 on a particular video, and 3 likes, and so we're kind of blowing it up. And I don't think it was me just pressing play and going away. That could have been the case that I put it on autoplay or something, but I don't think it was me. I think it was somebody else. We're receiving increasing page likes on Citizen Representatives page on Facebook, and we continue to make inroads in the podcasting space. Again, this is a new effort by me and Adam to try to bring this idea to light, to bring it to the masses. There's a lot of work to be done. There's we're doing our part. And we would like for you to do your part. If you like what we're talking about, if you would like the page, subscribe, share the message. We're trying to get out some snippets of these interviews that are smaller, easier to share, easier to consume. We'd really appreciate that. You can also visit our website at citizenrepresentatives.org. Now, last week we talked about, I just wanted to kind of talk about a couple of things that we talked about last week and the week before, just as a kind of summary and things that we build on. A couple weeks ago we talked about civil rights and the idea of serving people, and when we should legally be forced to serve someone and when we shouldn't be. Now, I don't think that I really phrased that well, but I mean that in the with the frame of cancel culture, because there is an increasing push for big companies and government in some cases, in the case of what they call Operation Chokepoint, to remove services and things from people who have certain viewpoints. Now, Operation Chokepoint, I believe, was started under President Obama. It was a way to, one of the first areas they used it on was with the gun manufacturers. So they made it increasingly difficult for gun manufacturers to have banking. And so they put pressure on the banking system because the government regulates the banking system. And they said these are increasing, these areas are of concern to us, and we would like for them to be restricted. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I may be off. If I'm misunderstanding this, please let me know. But some of those areas included gun manufacturing. And so they made it increasingly difficult for gun manufacturers to have lines of credit. Now that same kind of idea is spreading to other areas. One of the ones, I can't remember if I talked about it last week, Gab.com, which is a Twitter alternative, they're finding it increasingly difficult to have a bank account and use their own money. And there are other stories that go on about this type of thing. And so the premise that I was bringing up, which I didn't come up with, but it's come through some understanding of some authors and readings that I have, is that if you offer something that's off the shelf that is the same for everyone, you should not be able to restrict that. You shouldn't be able to turn away service for people. So if you're offering a bank account that's the same for every business or every person that's out there, then you shouldn't be able to say, no, you can't bank with us. That reminds me that I have heard that President Trump has had some of his bank accounts closed, and he's had to relocate some of those. And the idea that if the product that you offer is of artistic quality or in something that you create out of your own creativity, I'm using kind of the same words there, then yeah, you can say, no, I'd rather not do business with you. But if you offer something that's the same for everyone, you shouldn't be able to deny service to them. And that includes deplatforming with Facebook, Twitter, and those type of things, as long as you're not breaking the law. So that's kind of a principle that I am trying to let people become aware of and spread. One of the other ones that we were talking about last week was, how do we counter the cancel culture? And I'm still not sure that I know the answers to that. Part of it is, we talked about this phenomenon of a very small group of people driving narratives, driving the thought forms of the day, because it's just easier to go along with it than to counter it. And I think that has a lot to do with what's going on today, and we're going to get into that a little bit right now. Now, I was chatting with Adam about the topics that we'd like to talk about, and one of the things that I said was, I'd like to talk about institutional rot. And we have these institutions that are supposed to be kind of safe havens for us, for all people. They're supposed to be just you can count on these institutions to serve us well. At least we could in the past. And maybe we're just now waking up to the realization that these things were always politicized, just we didn't realize it. Maybe it is kind of a new phenomenon that these organizations are becoming politicized and being turned against the very people that supported them.
Yeah, it seemed in the past, I'll jump in here, Tyler. It seemed in the past that, even if these institutions did certain things, that citizens could kind of respond um, based on, hey, I'm not going to use that service anymore. Hey, I'm gonna we're gonna start if leaving comments and surveys. We're going to and you could kind of influence these things through the natural market, just kind of organically help them. And I think a lot of them are self-interested enough to inherently want to do that if it's in their interest. If their bottom line is making money, I think a lot of times they just act out of self-interest and they want to, okay, let's we got to go where the customers are. We got to do things that are in our best interest. And generally, I think, even though we go through these times in history where we make mistakes, uh, society's not perfect by any means, and sometimes you need a rebel to stand up for injustices and things. But overall, I think the vast majority really want what's best for people. And in the past, the consumer really had a chance to drive that. And now what we're seeing is that they've taken emotional arguments and taken away the ability of the consumer to be able to drive that messaging, drive these issues the way that they ought to be driven, um, and that the minority now is in charge of, or minority group, any minority group can jump in. I think we talked about this last week, and influence these things, and um, no longer is there a majority opinion that can help influence companies and drive them in the right direction towards an ultimate good. And it's becoming apparent that it's really dangerous when the minority has so much power, and that through an emotional argument you can silence a majority of people. So I don't know if that helps towards the
Yeah,
argument you're trying to make, but
yeah. So companies used to be, in my understanding, because I went to business school, companies are supposed to make money. The prime objective of a company is usually to make money and provide value for the shareholders. Now, many of the bigger companies explicitly have said, we're not in the business, I'm paraphrasing, of making money. We want to make change in the world. And they take these very, very small minorities of people who have these outrageous ideas. And I'm not opposed to outrageous ideas, but these are ones that attack the foundations of society
well,
that bring stability.
and is it so much that they want to create change and they want to do good things for the world, or is it that they're freaking paranoid about being canceled themselves, and so they respond instead of responding to the market, which generally will drive society towards the good that I think all people aspire to. Instead, they're responding to fear, that their company and their brand will be canceled, will be nullified, and you don't have enough people standing up to that fear and standing up to that cancellation. A few, The Goya. Um,
Hmm.
I think they're the food company. They stood up to it a little bit recently, but
So they were, I don't remember the whole story, but Goya, I think they showed support to President Trump, or they showed some sort of support against the cancel culture, or it was something along those lines. And instead of, I mean, their sales skyrocketed because
yeah,
there was just this outpouring of support. If any company says, "Hey, we're standing up to this cancel culture," by and large, they're supported by the base. You know, as long as they can't be canceled, maybe the grocery stores are going to stop carrying them, like they did with the My Pillow guy. The My Pillow guy was very pro Trump and very pro, whatever. And he went out on a limb, and his pillows have been, the distribution of his pillows has been greatly restricted from Bed Bath and Beyond and all of these other larger retailers. But there's been an outpouring of individual orders from directly from his website. So there is a market. There are market forces out there, and I don't know how to explain all of these things. We're just kind of making observations and trying to figure it out, and we realize that there's something wrong, and we don't have all the answers.
but I think it's really generous to say that these companies have an eye to bettering the world, right? I think they're fearful. I
That may be
really
just
do.
marketing.
And that's my opinion, but I really think they're responding to the fear of being, we got to be with the in crowd. It's like, I gotta be like this in order to be accepted, instead of no, what's really the right thing to do in a situation, right? So anyway,
And maybe I'm just you tend to look at situations and things a little bit deeper than I do. So I'm just looking at things at face value and believing them, I guess, for what they're saying. Coca-Cola, they want to change the world.
I
They're a
believe
soda
I
company
believed
who's
I believed them in the 1970s. I'd like to teach the world to sing. Absolutely. You know, that was a great commercial.
now there have been few companies who've caused more health issues than Coca-Cola. I mean, they're probably in the top 1% of all the companies in the world who've caused a lot of health problems. Let's just say that. And that's my opinion. I don't, with all the high fructose corn syrup and things that they've put out there, it's not a good thing. So we're talking about institutional rot. I want to talk about the FBI and the police for a minute. Now, there's this big back the blue movement. People try to pit the FBI and the police against, there's this in the press, the police are bad. At least that has been a narrative that it has been going on right now. When you dig deeper into what's going on actually with the FBI and the police, they've been heavily politicized. And now it's obvious for anyone to see that the FBI is not neutral, at least the leadership of the FBI. Now, this is probably true with most of these institutions. There's the leadership up the top that they see a certain thing, just like we're talking about. Um, they see a particular tweet, or they see a story, they see this or that, and they believe it. They don't want to be seen as someone who is a racist or a bigot, because anything that can be used against conservatives and Republicans will be used, even if it's the most egregious lie and mischaracterization. Well, the FBI and the leadership and a lot of the police, they don't want to be on that side. They want to be on the side of the quote unquote good, the good people. So the FBI is being politicized. Now, this is very apparent if you're familiar with Antifa. Antifa is an organization. If you believe the media, Antifa is an idea. It's just an idea that happens to throw Molotov cocktails and destroy billions and billions of dollars worth of city property in these states. Now, it's my understanding that yeah, there have been some arrests because some things are so egregious that you can't ignore them. But there is no effort to find the leaders of Antifa or the organizers or the funders of Antifa. There's no such effort to do that. Now you have the January 6th quote unquote riot at the Capitol building where there were, I don't know how many, approximately a million, maybe several hundred thousand people who came to see and to show support to President Trump. A very small number of those people they were agitators. They had planned this. It's come out in the news that this was planned long before. Trump did not incite any of this. They decided to go kind of storm the Capitol building. Now, this is aside from that, but they were basically let in. Many of these people, the guards were basically very accommodating to them and let a lot of these people in. So now those people who were let in, be through facial recognition and through other means, many of these people have been identified and they're being searched for. I didn't want to say hunted, but they're being hunted by the FBI. They're being their identities are now in databases that say these people are people of interest. And some of these people are being arrested just for, they weren't violent at all. Some of these people who are nearby are being now interviewed and questioned by the FBI. Now you compare and contrast that to this Antifa situation. Now the FBI is putting out all the stops, pulling out all the stops to find anyone who is associated with this January 6th event. They are not doing the same for Antifa, in my understanding. Now I could be wrong, maybe they are, but it just doesn't appear to me that they are. There are federal courthouses which have been set on fire by Antifa. Now the press does not cover this. The local news has some small stories about it, but it doesn't it doesn't make it to the national news. If this were some patriot group or something like that, it would lead the news nonstop. But Antifa, because it's Antifa, there's no coverage nationally at all. You can kind of see the dichotomy and the division between who is now a political who can be labeled political dissidents and who are they're on the approved list. Yeah, they're kind of dissidents in their own way, but they kind of have the stamp of approval from these things. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, no, I had a neighbor that said to me, because I was mentioning, this was in the summer, I was mentioning the Antifa riots in different cities throughout the US. And he said, "Oh, anarchy's a good thing." And I said, "Oh, really?" Um, Now I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have the same opinion about what took place on January 6th. So, um, it's interesting to see how consistent people can be. Do you have selective vision for these events, or are you, you know, are you do you condemn both things, right? And I think uh, it's been interesting to watch and see. Um, we basically have two major factions in this country, or at least, people tend to align 50% one way, 50% the other, it would seem, on most issues. And um, by and large, one group has condemned both consistently, right? The Antifa terrorism, um, or vandalism, you know, atrocities that have occurred. Um, and the January 6th events have been condemned pretty pretty consistently. Um, on the other hand, one group sees Antifa kind of as, oh, they're it's social justice. It's about BLM. It's about, and they've done mental gymnastics to try and work through that and justify that. But as soon as January 6th occurred, it was insurrection. It was the most heinous thing that could happen to this country. It was unbelievable. It was, so yeah, the selective outrage and the inability to see both events as um, for what they are, as not acceptable for for a democracy and for a society, and to not be able to weigh them, you know, in any form, that becomes really problematic, especially when the media drives a single narrative, or the majority of media drives a single narrative. So yeah, I think you've accurately, um, you know, painted that picture there, Tyler.
So another facet to this is the police with the pandemic that has occurred. We the people who tend to quote unquote back the blue tend to support the Constitution and the freedoms guaranteed in there. Then you have the police, some of the police who follow orders. Of course, many of the police are the same bent. They're very constitutional loving people and things of that nature. But when they get orders, some of these police tend to not remember the Constitution, and so there are story after story of people who are just going about their business, trying to trying to live their life, and the police kind of crack down on them. There's a story of a says New York judge removes 6-year-old mother because she didn't wear a mask when dropping off her child to school. And so now you have families being ripped apart because a mother was dropping their child off at school. They weren't going into the school. They were just dropping off the child, and apparently that was a big no-no. And now this mother is in danger of losing her kid. Of course, I'm just reading headlines, so I may be misrepresenting the story. I may not understand the story completely, but you can kind of see along those lines there. The COVID is being used as an excuse, and I did we talk about this last week, or was this something that we wanted to talk about? COVID is being used as an excuse to take away our freedoms.
Yeah.
And I don't think I think this has been planned for a long time. Something along these lines.
Yeah, this is a scary one, and I don't mean to get conspiratorial on this, but it's really scary when, because we know that the country's kind of been divided on COVID, right? People that support basic freedom, that want to really question things and look at evidence, versus people that want to accept authority and just go with what's safe, and they kind of have that fearful mindset, and we must do what the authorities tell us to do. And it's been divided along political lines, and so to be able to take that issue and then um, you know um, you start to litigate it in the court. I mean, that's a really dangerous situation. What else can a court do in order to um, limit the ability of somebody to say, "Hey, I'm outside. I don't need a mask. It's okay. I get it. There are mandates when I'm indoors, but this is an overreach of government, and now the government can step in and take away your child, and what are they going to do? Place them in a family where they can indoctrinate them in I don't know. It's a scary. precedent for the possibilities of what government intervention can do. I absolutely hate this story, and again, like you said, maybe we don't understand the whole gist of it, but on its surface, it sounds pretty terrible.
Well, there's another story that we'll cover later that doesn't specifically have to do with COVID, but it has to do with the state making decisions for a parent when that shouldn't be. The parent's rights are being taken away. Um, I think this, let's talk about, anyway, so there's no, in case of a pandemic clause in the Constitution. Let's put that out there. There's nothing that says, oh, if there's a pandemic that hits X amount of people, then you lose your, right to free speech, or you lose all of your freedoms. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that. And like you're saying, it's very worrying that any court would take this up, um, because they're going to make rulings that will be very hard to undo after the fact. So we're talking about institutional rot. We've talked about the FBI and the police, how they should normally be neutral arbiters about what their actions should be dictated by neutral kind of guidelines. They shouldn't go after people politically, but we're finding more and more that they are. And that should
Yeah.
be very, very worrying, because once the police are turned against the people, it's very difficult to get out from under that. Now, along those same lines, we're seeing some kind of flirtations with the military in getting involved in political matters. The military is politicized, but they're getting more open about it. Now, there was a big brouhaha this week about some comments that Tucker Carlson made. He's a Fox News commentator, for those who don't have a TV or pay attention to anything. And he was commenting on the military having maternity flight suits for women who happen to be pregnant. And so they're having these flight suits so they can be ready to go into situations where they would need military flight suits. I'm not in the military. Maybe they're just going about their business on a base. Maybe they're, taking it easy. Maybe, I don't know what they use these for, but in my understanding, flight suits are used for when you're in kind of an active duty situation. So Tucker Carlson made some comments along those lines that the military should be focused on China and not on providing military maternity flight suits. And this thing blew up like crazy. And there were members of the military who were in positions of power on their official Twitter handles making disparaging and somewhat threatening comments to Tucker Carlson. And this did not go over well with a lot of the people who I follow on Twitter who were former military. And it should be very concerning for anyone who follows and knows kind of the structure of and how the military should operate. When you're in a position of power, you should never, in my understanding, now again I could be wrong, you should not get on and make political statements about a political commentator. You should keep your mouth shut because it's not part of your duty to do that. And once these lines have been crossed, when Trump was president, a lot of these military members were painted as white supremacists or racists or whatever. And there was none of the military leadership, in my recollection, nobody was yapping back at the people who were pushing these narratives in the major news. They were completely quiet. There was no sort of defense of these military men. Now, Tucker says to the brass in the military, you should be focused on fighting China or being ready to engage in some sort of altercation or whatever with China. You should be focused on that instead of pushing this kind of la la um, kumbaya military thing. Now, he was basically, the military put out a study about 5 years ago that said that 65% of the women who attempted the military fitness test, they failed it. And so now, of course, instead of rejecting the women from service, now they're doing away with those or making them easier. So study after study has shown that groups and units who are male only tend to perform better. Now that's not taking away anything from women. Women and men are generally speaking better suited. Men are better suited for some things, women are better suited for others. Now I know I may get a lot of hate for that, but that's true. And Tucker Carlson was saying such, and so now it's become apparently okay for the military in their uniforms on their official Twitter accounts to make political statements, and that is very concerning. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you only need to look at biology. The evidence is there that males and females are inherently genetically made up differently, and probably one of the best areas we have to observe this is the sports arena. And we were talking about gender and you know transgender people participating in sports, and how these women, it's detrimental to women, right? Because they can't compete against men. And so it's a tedious, it's become tedious to me that we have to have this argument that the physical body of most males, and that's not all. Some females are perfectly suited to do this, yes, but it should be a meritocracy, right? If you have the skills, if you're able to perform physically in combat situations, then that should be the standard. And so to lower those standards in order to meet some sort of affirmative action agenda, in order to appear noble, to virtue signal our inclusiveness, is just pure BS. And I think that's all Tucker was saying, that uh, we can't shy away from that. We still have real world issues. I mean, it would be nice if most of the world were peaceable, and we could embrace different qualities of different human beings in situations where maybe it didn't matter so much anymore, but it still matters. China aside, we have all kinds of issues throughout the world where we need to be prepared, because you never know when it's going to come, and if we're not prepared for that, what's going to happen? So um, no, I mean, you're spot on. And I don't think we need to be careful about this topic. I mean, it's uh, it's it's pretty straightforward. I think what Tucker Carlson was saying was pretty reasonable, and it's unfortunate. And like you said, I mean, the real issue is that the military has traditionally been a place where they're neutral to politics, right? You have a command, you do according to what the leaders decide. And um, for the American citizen, our job now is to tell these leaders what they need to be communicating to their military, right? And unfortunately, I think we've done a poor job of that lately. But a lot of it is due to this institutional rot that you talk about, and that people get into these career situations in government bureaucracy, and it's just a downward spiral. They have their agendas, and so maybe we need more rotation within those positions, within those, um, where every 4 years you're replaced, you're put into a new sector or something, because it's too hard. It's it's dangerous when you have this kind of institutional rot, that these leaders get into these positions and they have 30-year careers, and they may have an agenda, and I don't care if that's right or left, but if you have a hardcore agenda, that could be problematic.
Let's talk about schools for a minute. Now, I have children in school. You have children in school. A lot of people have children in school. I'm not just talking about K through 12. I'm talking about college also. Now, what has come about through this COVID is we're finding that the teachers unions are wielding their power in ways that we didn't, a lot of us anticipated, but I didn't think that they'd go to the extent that they have. They're trying to make it so many of these teachers unions, are trying to make it basically so that the teachers don't have to teach.
Yeah.
They want to have it, 2 days on, 3 days off, and virtual days. Um, they're trying to make it so, in the name of COVID, that these teachers can get many of these things that they have wanted before, which is better pay. I'm not begrudging them for wanting better pay, but I don't think this is the way to do it. You're holding these kids hostage. Many of these teachers unions are holding the kids hostage in the name of COVID, and they're saying we're not going to come back until you give us this and this and this, and we want these protections and this and this and this, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, this is a story that I found on Ace of Spades. Teachers plot to infiltrate and expose and use hackers to silence parents who object to critical race theory. Now, we talked about critical race theory before, which is basically an effort to make people feel guilty for their race and give other people things that they wouldn't have otherwise. It says a group of current and former teachers and others in Loudoun County, Virginia, compiled a lengthy list of parents suspected of disagreeing with school system actions, including its teaching of controversial racial concepts, with a stated purpose in part to infiltrate, to use hackers to silence parents' communications, and to expose these people publicly. Members of a 624-member private Facebook group called Anti-Racist Parents of Loudoun, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, named parents and plotted fundraising and other offline work. Some use pseudonyms, but the Daily Wire has identified them as a who's who of the affluent jurisdiction outside D.C., including schools, staff, and elected officials. The Sheriff's Criminal Investigations Division is reviewing the matter, but the group's activities might be no surprise to top law enforcement because the county's prosecutor, narrowly elected with the help of $845,000 in cash from George Soros, appears to be a member of the Facebook group. So you have these, I don't know why they're so adamant about forcing kids to participate in these critical race theory kind of lessons. I don't get it. Do you understand what the kind of reasoning is behind that and why they would push this so hard?
Well, I mean, I would think it's about control. I mean, if you which is ironic because the ones pushing this are probably the most white elitist people in the country, right? So, but they're sufficiently guilty. They feel the guilt. They've bled on the cross enough that they can tell the rest of us how much we should be bleeding on the cross. And I think it's a lot of distraction. I really don't think they believe this. In fact, most of their theories are very um, productive to what they actually promote, which is, trying to create equality, with colored people and people of different races to give them a chance to excel. But I think it's condescending. It says that um, they're not good enough. This other one's been too privileged for too long. So we're gonna try and give them everything. And I think it's all BS. I call out these white elitists, and anybody who adopts this ideology, as actually, I think it's actually more racist than the people they think they're calling out. They are the racists, right? Because they believe that you can't succeed on your own merits. That it's not about who you are as a character, and about building character, and about building a community, and building family, and building your family structure. It's about, we're going to give you this because you're not making it, and um, you know these white this white race is just bad. It's been bad to you. It hasn't helped you, and there's truth in that, right? But it's usually coming from this type of ideology, which wants to give everything and enable, and inherently, in the end, it ends up keeping keeping these people impoverished, keeping them, um, you know, I mean, there's so many issues we could talk about here, whether it's, abortion, which, the eugenics, um, that fueled the abortion issue, that, the black race today should be twice the population of what it is in the US if it hadn't been for the pushing of, um, uh,
Margaret
contraceptives.
Sanger,
Yeah,
who founded Planned Parenthood, was a
exactly.
very famous eugenicist.
Which you might as well say is, anybody that's a eugenicist is racist, right? You believe in the segregation of the races, and you believe that there is superiority in one race over another. So that, and she's put on a pedestal as this great forward-thinking person who pushed, the free choice, that you can abort a baby, and really what it did was suppress the very, culture of blacks in this country, who were doing fine otherwise without all of this help that they pretended to give. So I'm diverting a little bit from what you're talking about, but it's, critical race theory is a bunch of bunk.
So another thing along the lines of school rot. Now this happened in Canada, so they don't have our constitution, but similar things I believe are happening in the United States. Horror: father faces arrest and jail time for trying to stop doctors from transitioning his middle school daughter to a boy. So this man, his daughter started to show tendencies of being a tomboy, and the school took it upon themselves to introduce this girl to a radical doctor and psychologist, I believe, who deals with gender dysphoria. And so he is a very creepy looking fellow. and and now the state is going to arrest the dad because he's saying, I know, I don't want this to happen to my child. Now, again, I may not be understanding everything that's going on, but to me, a school should not get involved in these type of things. This is a parent matter. If the dad is having an issue with the mom, they should work that out. There's some dynamics that we may not understand here, but the idea that a school should get involved and push that some students should get hormone blockers and possibly have a reassignment surgery is ludicrous and crazy to me. And it just goes to show that people get these ideas that they think that they're doing something right. They see this new idea that of transitioning your gender, and it's kind of trendy, and they want to be they want to be on the quote unquote right side of that. And
yeah,
schools should have no place involved in that.
yeah.
Now, do you have a comment?
No, I was going to say, I mean, I don't think either of us has an opposition to a person deciding, hey, even if they're young, you know, I don't like the encouragement side of that, right? But if a person wants to decides that they just feel inherently, of a different gender, go ahead, knock yourself out, and do whatever you need to do to feel good. I think we all support that. But yeah, like you say, the educational system, government does not have a place, a role, especially inhibiting the rights of parents who haven't shown any propensity to be abusive or in that relationship, or you know if there's no real evidence that the parents are mistreating the child, then the government definitely has no place there. I think the children are very vulnerable, and it becomes very dangerous. Even young adults. I have a family. I'm related to somebody through marriage and then this was, gosh, 40 years ago. When this was not even on the radar, and um, a young lady decided, because of influence of I believe it was a university professor. This was at an early age, maybe 18. Decided that she was a male and had some surgeries done. Again, this was well before it became commonplace, and I'm sure it was a very hard thing to go through, and not very accepted. I think her family was relatively accepting of it. But she went through this transition and then later in life realized that it was a mistake, and regretted that decision. And so I just think the young mind is very vulnerable, um, especially subjected to older influences. And we have to be really careful and in how we address this issue of gender identity. I think we need to be sensitive to it, but um, until the brain is fully formed, until the emotional state is fully formed, I think um, these kinds of encouragement and, in this case, outright, intervention of a government authority is not okay.
So, I'm going to talk about college just for a quick second. Now, we've been taught that segregation is bad for as long as I can remember. Segregation, segregating people because of their skin color, their race, their religion, their whatever, separating people from what I have been taught is not the right thing to do. Now, people obviously they can form their own associations and things. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is a forced segregation of people is not, I don't think, a good thing. Now, of course, the woke set is bringing back segregation. Columbia University to host 6 graduation ceremonies based on race, sexuality, and income level. So, of course, the ones who are promoting this and call everyone racist are the biggest hypocrites because they are always dividing people by this or that, or they're always segmenting people into different little groups. And typically, I try to just treat everyone the same. Let's get along, and I, I I don't care what you guys do as long as you're not messing with me. As
Yeah,
long as what you're doing is not infringing on my rights or my whatever. I don't care what you do. But now
right.
Columbia, they're bringing they're bringing segregation back. I think it's hilarious on one side, but concerning on the other.
Yeah. Well, and there's such a cognitive dissonance there, right? That they can't see their own hypocrisy. That they can't see how ridiculous this is. That they're the ones calling out the racists, and yet they're the ones dividing. And I think that's the very definition of racism, if I recall. So,
So we've talked about a lot about kind of institutional rot. We could have gone on for another hour. I was going to talk about politicization, what's the word?
I think you hit it.
Making everything politicized in science. Science has become politicized. The church, I'm not talking about any particular church, just churches in general have been consumed, many, by the woke set. And the press is one of the worst examples of this. And the press is one of the, well, I don't know how to rank it, but there's a certain level of evil that's within the press. I don't know I don't know another way to say it, because they're so intent on doing anything to push their narrative that it doesn't matter to them as long as they get what they want. Now, I don't know why all of these institutions have all of a sudden decided to have become rotten to the core. We've kind of touched on that. Maybe it's, um, are we spoiling our children too much? Maybe that's pretty, um, there's probably a lot to be said for that. There's the participation trophy generation who now have been coddled their whole lives, that they, if you're not telling them they're the best and they're the brightest and they're just, you know, the
They're
best
hurt,
at everything, they're hurt and
offended.
they're very offended. And that may have a lot to do with it. Um, there are different cycles in history, and you can see this with civilizations, with countries, it just happens. There are always these cycles. Now, they talk about it in the Book of Mormon. We're not going to go into the Book of Mormon really, but they call that the pride cycle in the Book of Mormon, where people are righteous, they become prideful, then they become wicked, and then basically there's destruction. Now, I think that kind of general cycle can be viewed everywhere in history. You don't have to believe in the Book of Mormon to see cycles. Some people have broken it down to people are in bondage, then they have spiritual faith, courage, liberty, abundance. And then once you hit the abundance, then you get into a little bit of selfishness. Then you get into complacency, apathy, dependence. And I think that we're really close to where I know I've been apathetic about quite a few things. you know, I'm I'm over 40 years old and I haven't really spoken out about anything until a couple months ago. And I'm just starting on trying to share some of the things that I've learned and try to make a difference. Um, now we've already been dependent for a while. If we really followed the Constitution, people there would be far less dependency because people would be on their own. Now they can come together as communities and things of that nature, and that's what's great about churches and groups and things like that, because people can come together and form a support network greater than themselves, greater than just their family. They can become part of a community, and I'm very supportive of that. Once that community, once it becomes so large and you start that community to pick and choose winners, then that's where I have an issue with it. And I think we're very close to bondage, so to speak. We're very close to losing a lot of our freedoms. We've already lost a lot of the freedom that we have. Now, how do we counter these things? I think that's a large part of what we're trying to do is make a fundamental difference with citizen representatives by giving power back to some of the people. Now, this is a calculated risk because I don't trust everyone, but I trust the collective kind of decisions of people who are well informed better than one guy or one gal who has been lobbied by big tech or big agriculture or big pharma or whatever. I trust that idea to decentralize these decisions and what's going on in the culture and politics. I trust that a lot more. With the schools, I don't know. There's a movement right now to fund students and not systems. And so I really like this idea, and it goes along the lines of the vouchers, which is the idea that a student can go wherever they want. The money that normally would be associated and go with that student can take it wherever they want. And there are a large number of what are they called?
Charters,
Charter schools in my area
private
that
private
people
schools.
that kids can choose to go to, and the the government of Utah, in my understanding, has said, yeah, you can do that. You can, instead of going to public school, you can choose to go to a charter school. Now it's harder to get into the charter schools, so there is kind of a competition there. But there's this large movement to fund students rather than institutions, and this goes to kind of a free market kind of idea and ideal to me, because you can pick and choose. You can tell which schools are better than others. You hear what goes on in public schools. And I'm not saying that charter schools are perfect, but in many cases they're a lot better. What do we do with colleges? How do we remove the wokeness from college? Well, we have to again bring back some of the free market ideas to college. Right now, one of the reasons that colleges have gained so much power and kind of prestige, I don't know if prestige is the word, but they've gained so much, is because of the student loan program. Now, the student loan program, pretty much any student can get a loan from the time they're 18 or whatever. They can get a loan to take any classes, excuse me, that they want in college. They can take any sort of major that they want, regardless of the career opportunities that are available after they're done. And those loans are guaranteed by the government. So these banks and institutions, they're in the student loan business, which is it's a great deal for them because their loan is guaranteed. And if the students default, they can't get that debt discharged in bankruptcy. So an idea that is out there is to remove the guarantees of these loans. That would make it so that the lenders of the loans, they have to take a look at the student and go, okay, well, what are you taking?
Yeah.
Are you taking gender studies, which there's only 3 or 4 professorships in the area that are available? Or are you going to be an engineer or an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor or, whatever the case may be, that there are plenty of job opportunities. Now that lender is going to say, maybe not. I'll give you half. You know, these are just some ideas that are out there. Another one is putting the colleges on the hook, saying, okay, we're going to give you, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars you're going to give me a degree. Now, we're going to have a deal here. If I don't get a good paying job after the fact, then you're on the hook for that. Now, these are just some ideas that we have out there. How do we, and now I didn't really ask you this, but as far as science goes, how do we depoliticize science, Adam?
Whoa. Well, part of the problem is that science has been hijacked by media so much. I mean, I've been reading a book, and it talks about, for instance, the climate change issue, um, and the IPCC. You're familiar with that report that comes out every so often. All these scientists come together, they collaborate, they talk about the data. And a lot of what goes into the actual IPCC report, which is, thousands of pages, nobody has time to read that. So they narrow it down to a 40 to 60 page document and try to take highlights of all these other issues, but it's inherently, um, it always ends up with bias or hyperbole, or it's not. And then you actually go back, and if you interview the scientists who are part of the original committee, they go, that's not really what we were trying to say. This has nothing to do with it. It's just that, and then the media gets a hold of it, and that's a third layer, right? And they take the IPCC condensed report, and they see a tagline, and they roll with it. Oh, apocalypse. We're going to die to in 10 years. So this is what happens. This steady progression of or digression of actual science to where it gets encapsulated in bite-size, um, tidbits that the mass, um, the major media outlets put forth, and then we're subjected to this as consumers, and we get just little snippets, and it's like, well, yeah, I better get on that cause. So, um, I think we have to hold these kinds of publications accountable for what they're putting out there, and it takes watchdogs. I don't know what the solution is to make um, science more accountable to this, but I know there's a desire among a lot of scientists to do so. But again, then you get into the issue of, well, I don't want to lose my grant money. I'm studying this, and there's pressure if I don't get the right conclusions. And science is supposed to be always an open debate, right? It's questioning everything, even our evidence. We should be questioning that. But unfortunately, it's everything's become settled. It's settled science, which is just it's a genius way of selling the idea that you just need to listen to the expert, and then you know move along. Um, so I mean, fortunately, we have some authors out there that are holding these ideas accountable, but I don't know what other than us talking about it, other than the lay person talking about it on a podcast that reaches X amount of viewers. Some books get written by more credentialed people over time. Hopefully that will, we give the book to our parents to read, and hopefully so that they're not reading Time magazine anymore and National Geographic, which has just become garbage literature. Sorry. Um,
You're hurting
uh,
my childhood.
yeah, I know. These publications that used to be so valuable to us, these pictures, these iconic pictures of men walking on the moon, and people exploring in different parts of the world, and the oceans, and space, and now they've become just politicized baloney. It's unfortunate. So I think we just have to keep pushing. We have to keep educating. We have to speak up, and we have to connect with the real science out there, because I know there's a desire among actual scientists and researchers to have the information interpreted correctly.
Now, this is perhaps something, we talk about the cycles of democracy of countries, the pride cycle. Perhaps, there's a lot of scales, and uh, there's a lot of sclerosis. There's kind of this idea that sometimes we just need something new, and in order to get that, something needs to kind of fall apart. Now, I don't wish for the United States to fall apart. I wish for the Constitution to remain as the law of the land. I think a kind of return to some constitutional principles would help, but is kind of a falling apart of things maybe part of the solution to this?
Yeah, I mean, it already has, right? I mean, the thing, it's like you and me. We're kind of apathetic. We hope things will get better. We hope somebody else speaks out for us. We have our chosen pundits on TV that we can go to and kind of feel good about, okay, yeah, the message is out there, but until we bring it down to the local level and have the the wherewithal to to speak out against some of this ourselves, yeah, I mean, we're subjected to that breakdown, and there's a lag time until enough people, you know, yeah, what is do we talk about? It's the you know, anyway, I lost that train of thought, but um, we have
Well,
to
we have,
y
are you talking about points of tension?
points of tension. Thank you. That was the term. Yeah. And sometimes we let things disintegrate enough to where a point of tension is created, and then we finally do something. Now, is it too late to do something? That becomes the question. But you still have to keep moving forward. You can't throw your hands in the air and give up.
Yeah, so we have a big opportunity here. I can feel points of tension going on right now with what's going on. I see and feel all of these things just kind of clamping down. There's a ratcheting up of rhetoric. There's a ratcheting up of pressure. There's a ratcheting up of just kind of everything that's going on right now. And pretty soon it's gonna explode. It's gonna, you know, things that are bad need to go by the wayside. Things that are good need to come back out, and it's up to us to try to make sure that the things that shouldn't come back, that they stay back, and the things that are good should come forward. I don't know what the solutions to that are. I do know with the monetary system specifically, I do know that the Federal Reserve has seen Bitcoin and the idea of cryptocurrency. They know that they can't stop it. The idea of Bitcoin is out there. It's gaining more and more momentum. The idea of a store of value that there's only so many made, that instead of a particular currency being inflated and the value of it going down and down, the value of the dollar has gone down 90 something percent since its inception. Uh, the idea that something could maintain its value, the ideas are out there. A lot of these institutions will be forced to adapt regardless of if they want to or not. And I think it's important that we find solutions that maintain our freedom, that maintain the control that people have, that we can still, we're not ceding our sovereignty to some distant land or some distant person. They're always talking about this one world government, which maybe that's inevitable, but it's up to us to make that make it something that can serve us.
Something that's operable under principles of freedom.
So citizen representatives, again, is the idea that we get together as citizens in a district or state. We get together and come together to elect representatives and senators with the understanding that they will vote with the will of the people. And that's the idea of citizen representatives. Help help us spread the idea. Help us get it out there. We're available on Facebook. We're available on YouTube. We're available on wherever you consume your podcasts. Adam, do you have any last thoughts?
Um, no, I think I've exhausted myself tonight. Thank you. Good
Pretty
show.
heavy topics. Pretty heavy topics. Please visit our website, citizenrepresentatives.org. If you feel the desire, we would love it if you would donate. We're we're just, stringing this together. We don't have big funders. If you're a big funder, we would definitely take your call. But we're we're going at this alone by and large. But we would love for your help and participation. My name is Tyler. My friend Adam was with us tonight. Thank you for your attention and your participation, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you, Tyler.